What if you wake up and the world you know is gone? No phone, no lights, no future you recognize. Only cold stone, silence, and a life you were never meant to live. You went to bed the same way you always did. There was nothing special about that night. Nothing strange. Nothing that warned you of what was about to happen. Your phone rested nearby, face down, quietly charging. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of streetlights slipping through the curtains. Somewhere outside, a car passed by. Far away, muffled, familiar. The world still worked the way it always had. You lay on your bed, wrapped in blankets that smelled like clean fabric and quiet comfort. Your body was tired, but not exhausted. Your mind wandered lazily, drifting from thought to thought without effort. Tomorrow would come, just like every other day. That was what you believed. You didn't know that this night was different. Not because of something you did. Not because of a decision or a mistake, but because it was the last time you would fall asleep in the world you knew. You closed your eyes. The sound of electricity hummed softly in the walls. A distant air conditioner breathed in slow, steady rhythm. The invisible systems of modern life kept working around you, quietly and faithfully. You trusted them without thinking. Your breathing slowed. Your shoulders relaxed. The weight of the day began to loosen its grip on your body. Sleep came gently. At first, your thoughts were still clear. You thought about small things, unimportant things, messages you hadn't replied to, tasks you would handle tomorrow, plans that could wait. Your mind moved the way it always did before sleep, half awake, half drifting. Then, slowly, something changed. Not suddenly, not sharply. Just a subtle shift. Your thoughts began to stretch. Time felt softer, less defined. Your breathing deepened. The edges of your awareness blurred. You were sinking. And somewhere in that quiet descent, the world you knew slipped away. You dreamed. But the dream was strange. There were no images at first. No faces, no places, only a feeling, a heavy feeling. As if your body was sinking into something thick and cold. Not water, not darkness, something heavier. Your chest felt tight, not painful, just heavy. You tried to move, but your limbs felt distant, unresponsive, like they belonged to someone else. In the dream, you weren't afraid. You were confused. Sounds came and went. Soft at first, then rougher. A low wind, a faint crackling noise. Your mind tried to form meaning, but the dream refused to take shape. There was no story, no direction. Only the feeling that something was ending and something else was beginning. You woke up slowly. Not with a jolt, not in panic. Just a gentle return to awareness. At first, you noticed the cold. It wasn't the clean, dry cold of air conditioning. It was damp, clinging, the kind of cold that seeps into skin and bone. Your body felt stiff, heavy. You tried to stretch, expecting the familiar resistance of a mattress beneath you, but there was none. Your back pressed against something hard, uneven, rough. You frowned slightly, eyes still closed. For a brief moment, your mind tried to explain it away. Maybe I fell asleep on the couch. Maybe I rolled off the bed. But the surface beneath you didn't feel like a floor. It felt like earth. Your fingers twitched. They brushed against something. Coarse. Dry. Sharp. Straw. You opened your eyes. The light was wrong. Too soft. Too gray. No ceiling. No walls. No familiar shapes. Above you, there was only a pale sky, clouded and dull. As if the sun were struggling to exist behind it, you sat up slowly. The Movement sent a dull ache through your spine. Your clothes felt thin, inadequate. You looked down at your hands. They were dirty, not lightly dusty, not smudged, covered in dark soil. Your heart began to beat faster. You turned your head. You were lying in a small, open space surrounded by crude wooden structures, rough beams, uneven planks. Nothing was straight. Nothing was smooth. The air smelled wrong. Not like pollution. Not like smoke. It smelled of damp earth. Old wood, animals, and something else. Something. Sour. Something alive. You pushed yourself to your feet. The ground beneath you was soft in places, hard in others. Mud clung to your shoes. Shoes. That suddenly felt out of place. You looked down. Again. They were still your shoes. Modern. Clean. At least they have been. Now they were stained with mud and straw. Your clothes were the same ones you wore to bed. But here, they looked strange, wrong. You turned slowly, taking in your surroundings. There were huts. Low, cramped structures with thatched roofs. Smoke drifted lazily from a few openings. Thin and gray. No glass. No metal. Just wood, rope, and earth. You heard voices. Rough voices. They spoke nearby, just beyond one of the huts. You couldn't understand the words. The language was unfamiliar, harsh in tone. Short, clip sounds. Your stomach tightened. This wasn't a dream. You knew that with a certainty that settled deep in your chest. Dreams had a softness to them, a distance. This felt solid, cold, real. You took a step forward. Your foot sank slightly into the mud. You felt it. The pressure. The resistance. Another step. Your breathing quickened. A man emerged from between two huts. He stopped when he saw you. His eyes narrowed. He wore rough clothing, thick fabric, worn and stained. Leather boots, cracked and misshapen. His beard was unkempt. His face weathered, lined in ways that spoke of years under open skies. He stared at you like you were something unnatural, something misplaced. He said something. You didn't understand. You opened your mouth to speak. "Hey," you said, your voice sounding strange even to yourself. "Where am I?" The man's expression hardened. He said something louder this time. Another person appeared. Then another. They gathered slowly, cautiously. Watching you. Judging. "I don't understand," you said. "I need help." Your words meant nothing to them. You could see it in their eyes. Confusion, suspicion, a hint of fear. One of them laughed shortly. "Not kindly." Another spat on the ground. Your heart pounded. Raised your hands slightly, palms open. A universal gesture of peace. It didn't seem to help. They spoke among themselves. Their voices low and fast. The sounds felt ancient. Heavy. As if the language itself carried the weight of centuries. You understood then. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. You were not where you were supposed to be. This was not your world. Not your time. A chill ran through you. Deeper than the cold air. You thought of your bed. Your room. Your phone. Electric light. Running water. All of it felt impossibly far away. As if it belonged to another life. Another person. The man closest to you stepped forward. He reached out and grabbed your sleeve. His grip was strong. Callous. Unforgiving. He said something again. Slow and sharp. You didn't know what he wanted, but you knew one thing with terrifying clarity. You had gone to sleep in the modern world, and you had woken up somewhere else entirely. Somewhere. Old. Somewhere unforgiving. Somewhere that did not care. Who you used to be dot, and as they led you away, across the muddy ground, past the crude huts and rising smoke, one thought echoed in your mind, quiet but relentless. This is not a place made for people. Like me, Dot, you were led away without resistance. Not because you agreed. Not because you understood. But because your body knew something your mind was still struggling to accept. This place was not safe for hesitation. The man's grip on your sleeve never loosened. His fingers pressed into the fabric, rough and unyielding, as if he feared you might disappear if he let go. You stumbled as they guided you forward. The ground was uneven. Mud clung to your shoes, pulling at each step. Straw crunched beneath your feet. No one spoke to you in a way you could understand. Their voices blended into a low murmur around you, sharp and unfamiliar, rising and falling like a language carved from stone rather than sound. You tried to listen for something familiar, a word, a tone, anything. There was nothing, only the slow realization that every sound here belonged to another age. They led you past more huts. Each one looked the same, low, dark, built without care for comfort or beauty. Smoke drifted from small openings in the roofs, stinging your nose. You caught glimpses of movement inside. Shadows, figures hunched over fires. The quiet labor of survival. Children stopped what they were doing to stare at you. Their faces were dirty, their eyes too serious. They did not smile. You felt exposed. Your clothes were wrong here. Too clean, too thin, too soft. Every step you took felt like an announcement. I do not belong. The path narrowed as you moved deeper into the settlement. You noticed the absence of things you had never questioned before. No wires, no poles, no roads. No glass. Just dirt, wood, and human effort. Your stomach twisted. Hunger was beginning to make itself known. Not the mild hunger you could ignore until lunch. This was sharper, more demanding. It came with a hollow ache, deep and persistent. You swallowed and kept walking. They stopped near a larger structure. It stood apart from the others. Built slightly taller, though no less crude. The door was heavy wood, reinforced with iron bands darkened by age. One of the men knocked once, not politely, not gently. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She was older than the others, her back slightly bent, her hair pulled tight and hidden beneath a cloth. Her eyes fixed on you immediately. They lingered longer than the rest. Assessing. Measuring. She spoke. The man holding your sleeve replied. Their exchange was quick, efficient. You could tell this was not the first time something unusual had crossed their path. The woman nodded once. She gestured sharply toward the door. You were pushed forward. Inside. The air was thick and warm. The smell hit you immediately. Smoke, sweat, old food. The room was dim, lit only by firelight. Shadows danced across the walls. There was no furniture the way you understood it. Only benches, rough tables, storage crates. The door closed behind you. With a dull thud. The sound echoed longer than it should have. Your heart began to race. The woman approached you slowly. She stopped a few feet away. Her eyes traveled over you, your face, your clothes, your hands. She said something. You shook your head. I don't understand, you said quietly. Your voice sounded weak. Here. Thin. She frowned. She reached out and took your wrist. Her grip was firm. Practiced. She turned your hand over, inspecting your palm. You felt suddenly small. She released you and spoke again, louder this time. The men responded. You caught fragments of emotion, even if the words escaped you. Suspicion, curiosity, annoyance. The woman sighed. She pointed toward a corner of the room. There was a pile of straw there, flattened, damp. Your stomach sank. You were pushed gently, but firmly in that direction. You knelt. The straw smelled old. You wrapped your arms around yourself, trying to keep warm. No one paid you any more attention. They moved on. You were no longer interesting. Just another problem placed out of the way. Time passed. You weren't sure how long. There was no clock. No phone. No measure except the slow burn of discomfort in your body. The cold crept back in as the fire dimmed. Your muscles ached from tension. You leaned back against the wall. The wood was rough and splintered. Your mind raced, then slowed, then raced again. This can't be real. But every sensation argued otherwise. You pinched your arm. The pain was sharp. Immediate. You closed your eyes. For a moment, you imagined your bed, the softness, the warmth. You imagined opening your eyes and seeing the familiar ceiling. You opened them. The dim room stared back. Unchanged. The hunger worsened. Your stomach cramped. You swallowed again, but there was nothing to swallow. Eventually, someone brought you food, if it could be called that. A bowl was placed on the ground in front of you. Inside was something thick and gray. It smelled faintly of grain and something sour. You stared at it. Your body reacted before your mind did. Your hand moved. You dipped your fingers into the bowl. The texture was wrong. Sticky, lumpy. You hesitated. Then you brought it to your mouth. The taste made you flinch. It was bland, heavy, but beneath that, there was bitterness. You chewed slowly. Your body accepted it reluctantly. Your stomach twisted, then settled. You ate the rest, not because you wanted to, because hunger left you no choice. When you finished, the bowl was taken away without a word. No one asked if you were okay. That night, you slept on the straw. Sleep came in fragments. You woke often. Each time, your body stiff and cold. Each time, the room's still there. The fire reduced to embers. The others breathing quietly in the dark. At some point, exhaustion claimed you fully. When you woke again, light filtered through the cracks in the days. Walls. Morning. Your second morning in this place. Your body felt heavy. Your back ached. Your mouth was dry. Someone grabbed your arm and pulled you up. You stumbled forward. Outside, the air was colder. The sky was overcast. A dull gray stretched endlessly above. You were handed something. A tool. Simple, heavy. Didn't know what it was for. You looked around. Others were already working, digging, carrying, lifting. No. One explained. You were shoved toward a patch of ground. The message was clear. Work, but you tried to mimic what you saw. Your movements were awkward. Your muscles protested. Blisters formed quickly. The tool felt wrong in your hands. Too heavy, poorly balanced. Your back screamed as you bent and lifted. Again and again. No one slowed for you. No one helped. Hours passed. Your sense of time blurred. The sun moved slowly across the sky. Your hunger returned, stronger. This time. Your throat burned with thirst. At some point, you were given water. It was warm. Cloudy. You drank it anyway. Your modern instincts screamed at you, but your body didn't care. It needed fluid, Dot, you worked until your arms. Shoot. Dot, until your hands burned. Until your mind began to drift. Dot, by the time they stopped. You could barely stand. You were led back. Dot, fed again. Given the same straw. Dot, as you lay there, staring at the dark ceiling. Something inside you shifted. Not hope. Dot, not acceptance. Dot, something quieter. Realization. Dot, this place did not care who you were before. That it did not care what you knew or what you had owned. Dot, here. Only one thing mattered. Whether you could endure tomorrow. Dot, your thoughts slowed. Dot, exhaustion wrapped around you like a heavy blanket. Dot, as sleep took you again. One truth settled deep in your mind. You had not just woken up in another time. You had woken up in a life where comfort was a memory. Dot, and survival was the only language anyone understood. You learned the truth on the third day. Dot, not through words, not through explanation, but through silence. Dot, by then, your body had already begun to change. Not in strength, not in resilience, but in awareness. Dot, you woke before anyone touched you. Your eyes opened to the dim, gray light seeping through the cracks in the walls. Your muscles ached in places you didn't know could ache. Your hands were swollen, raw, and stiff. For a moment, you forgot where you were. Then the smell returned. Dot, smoke, damp wood, human bodies. Dot, reality settled back in. You sat up slowly, careful not to move too fast. The straw beneath you shifted and whispered softly around you. Others were already awake. Dot, no one spoke. They moved with quiet purpose, as if sound itself were a luxury they could not afford. You watched them. Dot, their movements were efficient, practiced, the result of repetition stretching back years. You realized something unsettling. They did not wake up wondering what would happen. Today. Dot, they already knew. Someone handed you a piece of bread. If it was bread, Dot, it was hard, dark, dense. You bit into it carefully. Your teeth protested. Dot, the taste was flat, almost bitter. But you ate it. Dot, slowly. Dot, every bite felt deliberate, as if your body were learning a new rule. Dot, do not waste. Outside, the morning was cold. A thin mist clung to the ground, swallowing the lower halves of buildings and legs alike. Followed the others without being told. There was no need for commands. You had learned the pattern. You worked, carried. Dot, you lifted. Dot, you dug. Dot, your body complained constantly. Dot, your mind, however, grew quieter. Dot, at some point during the morning, you tried to speak again. Not loudly, not dramatically. Dot, just a simple question. Please, you said, turning to the man beside you. Do you understand me? He didn't look at you. He kept working. You tried another. Need help? No response. Dot, it wasn't that they didn't hear you. Dot, it was that your words meant nothing. Here, they passed through the air and vanished, leaving no trace. That was when it truly sank in. You did not speak their language. Dot, and they did not need to learn yours. Language, you realized, was not just about words. Dot, it was about belonging. And you belonged nowhere. Dot, as the hours dragged on, you began to notice details. The way people avoided eye contact, the way they kept their heads down, the way fear moved quietly beneath everything. You saw it when someone dropped a tool, the quick glance around, the tension in their shoulders. You saw it when a child cried and was silenced, almost immediately. Fear here was not loud. Dot, it was constant. Dot, at midday, you were given water again. Dot, it tasted the same. Dot, warm, unclean. You drank it anyway. You were learning to override instincts. Dot, your modern rules no longer applied. There was no pause. No break. Work. Resume. Your hands shook. Your back burned. Sweat soaked into your clothes, then cooled, making you shiver. You wondered how long you could last. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just practically. How many days before your body failed? The thought lingered, quiet and persistent. That night, as you lay on the straw once more, exhaustion pulled you down quickly. But sleep did not come easily. Your mind refused to rest on it. Wander back to your old life, your language, your voice. You had spoken freely once. You had been understood without effort. Here, your voice was useless. You whispered words to yourself, simple ones. Your name. The names of places you loved. They sounded foreign even to your own ears, like relics from another world. In the darkness, you listened to breathing, to distant movement, to the subtle sounds of a place that never truly slept. You realized something else, and no. One here talked at night. No quiet conversations. No whispered comfort. Silence ruled. You drifted into shallow sleep. And when you woke again, the pattern continued. Days blurred together. Work, food, straw. You stopped trying to explain yourself. You stopped asking questions. Your words had failed too many times. Instead, you watched. You listened. You began to recognize patterns in there. Speech. Not meaning, but rhythm. Certain sounds repeated during certain tasks. Certain tones signaled urgency. Anger. Approval. You learned when to move faster. When to stop. When to lower your head. This was your new education. One afternoon, a mistake cost you your tool. Slipped. Not badly, not dangerously, but enough. The man overseeing the work noticed. He shouted. The sound cut through the air like a blade. Froze. He approached quickly. Too quickly. You tried to explain. I'm sorry, you said. It was an accident. Your words fell uselessly to the ground. He struck you, not with rage. With routine. The blow was sharp, precise. Pain flared across your shoulder. You staggered but did not fall. No one reacted. No gasps. No protest. The work continued. Your face burned. Not just from pain. From understanding. This was not cruelty. This was order. You learned not to flinch. After that. Not outwardly. Pain became another sound in the background. Something to endure. Something to survive. At night, you examined your bruises. In the dim light, they looked dark and unfamiliar. Your body no longer felt like yours. It belonged to this place now. Slowly, something frightening happened. You stopped thinking in long sentences. Your thoughts shortened. Became practical. Focused. Water, food, rest. Your mind adapted faster than you wanted it to. One evening, you noticed something else. A woman watching you. Not openly, not obviously, just brief glances. She was younger than most. Her face tired, her hands rough. When your eyes met, she looked away immediately. The next day, she left a piece of food near where you worked. She did not speak. She did not look at you, but she left it. You stared at it for a long moment before taking it. The gesture meant more than words ever could. Still, you could not speak to her. The distance between your worlds was too wide. You smiled weakly. She did not notice or pretended not to. That night, you lay awake longer than usual. Your body was exhausted, but your mind felt alert. You thought about language again. About how much of who you were depended on being understood. Here, stripped of words, You felt reduced. Smaller. And yet, part of you was changing. You were learning to exist without explanation, without identity. You were becoming invisible. And invisibility, you realized, was a kind of safety. As sleep finally took you, a quiet fear settled in your chest. Not fear of pain. Not fear of death, but fear of forgetting. Forgetting how it felt to be heard. To be known. You wondered how long it would take before you're old. Language faded. Before English became just another sound with no meaning. The thought followed you into dreams. Dreams where you spoke freely and no one listened. Dreams where your voice echoed endlessly. Unheard. When morning came, you woke with the same silence pressing down on you. And you understood the third truth of this place. Not everyone who lost their voice here lost it by force. Some lost it because there was no reason to use it anymore. Your body betrayed you before your mind fully understood what was happening. It started quietly. Stiffness that did not fade after movement. An ache that did not disappear with rest. You woke one morning and realized your hands no longer closed the way they used to. Your fingers felt swollen, thick. You flexed them slowly, watching the joints resist you. Pain answered every motion. Not sharp, not dramatic. Just steady. Persistent. The kind of pain that does not demand attention. The kind that waits. Work continued. It always did. You lifted. You carried. You dug. Your muscles burned sooner now. Your breath shortened faster. Sweat soaked into your clothes, then cooled against your skin, leaving you shivering even while you worked. Your body was tired in a way sleep could not fix. You tried to remember the last time you had pushed yourself like this. There was no memory. Your old life had been padded. Protected. Built around comfort. This place had no patience for that. By midday, your stomach cramped again. The hunger felt different now. Deeper. More urgent. It was no longer just emptiness. It was weakness. Your legs felt unsteady when you stood still. Your vision blurred briefly when you bent down too fast. You hid it. You learned quickly that weakness invited attention, and attention invited punishment. So you moved carefully. You slowed your breathing. You learned how to rest without stopping. How to lean on a tool for a fraction of a second without being noticed. Your body adapted in small ways, but it was losing the larger battle. At night, when the work ended and you lay on the straw, the pain came forward. Your back throbbed. Your shoulders ached deeply, as if something inside them were grinding against itself. You shifted position again and again, searching for comfort. There was none. Sleep came in short bursts. Broken. Each time you woke, your body reminded you of every hour you had spent using it. You began to understand something you had never needed to think about before. Your body was not built for this world. Not really. You had spent your life sitting, standing, walking short distances. Your muscles were trained for convenience, not survival. The people around you moved differently. They lifted with practiced ease. They endured with quiet acceptance. Their bodies were shaped by years of labor. Yours was shaped by chairs and screens. You paid for that now. One morning, as you lifted a heavy bundle, something inside you pulled wrong. The pain was sudden. Bright. You froze. Breath caught in your throat. Your vision narrowed. For a moment, you thought you might fall. You did not. You couldn't afford to. You adjusted your grip and kept going. But something had changed. Every movement after that carried a sharp reminder. You were injured, and injury here was dangerous. There was no medicine. No rest days. No understanding. You worked slower. You tried to hide it. The overseer noticed anyway. He always did. He watched the way a predator watches. Not with emotion, with calculation. You were pulled aside. Words were exchanged. You did not understand. You stood there, silent, eyes lowered. A hand pressed hard against your shoulder. Pain flared. You gritted your teeth. The message was clear. Your pain did not matter. Your body was expected to perform. You were sent back to work. You moved carefully. Every lift felt like a risk. Your breathing grew shallow. Your thoughts narrowed. Further. Survive this hour. Survive this task. Survive until night. Time slowed. The sun crawled across the sky. When the work finally ended, you could barely straighten your back. You walked stiffly, each step measured. That night, food tasted like nothing. You ate anyway. Your body demanded fuel, even if it gave nothing back in return. As you lay down, you stared at the darkness and tried to remember what it felt like to be comfortable. The memory was faint. Distant. Like something you had read about rather than lived. Days passed. Your injury did not heal. It settled, became part of you. You learned how to move around it. How to lift without twisting. How to turn your whole body instead of just your shoulders. Adaptation was slow. Painful. Necessary. Your hands grew rougher. Blisters hardened into calluses. Your skin cracked. Bled. Then healed poorly. You noticed small wounds. Took longer to close. A cut from a splinter stayed red for days. Your body lacked something. You didn't know what, but you felt it. A weakness beneath the surface. At night, you shivered more, even when others slept easily. The cold found you first. It lingered longer. Your clothes offered little protection. You pulled them tighter, but it didn't help much. Your teeth chattered softly until exhaustion overcame discomfort. You dreamed less now. When you did, your dreams were simple. Food, warmth, rest. Your old life barely appeared. When it did, it felt unreal. Like fiction. One afternoon, your body failed you. Not completely, but enough. You lifted a load and your legs buckled. You fell to one knee. The world tilted. Your heart raced. For a brief, terrifying moment, you could not stand. Silence spread around you. You felt eyes on your back. The overseer approached. You expected the blow. It did not come immediately. Instead, he waited. That was worse. He spoke. You did not understand the words, but you understood the tone. Disappointment. Annoyance. He gestured sharply. You forced yourself up. Your legs trembled. You kept them steady through sheer will. You resumed work. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Pain drowned out everything else. That night, as you lay on the straw, you realized something important. Your body would not survive here forever. Not like this. Not without change. Not without sacrifice. You thought about the people around you. Again, they had grown into this world. Their bodies adapted from childhood. Yours had not. You were catching up too late. You wondered how many others like you had failed. How many outsiders had arrived and quietly disappeared. The thought unsettled you. Sleep came slowly. Your body felt heavy. Too heavy. When morning arrived, you woke with dread instead of confusion. Your injury ached fiercely. Your stomach was tight. Empty. You sat up carefully. The room swayed slightly. You waited for it to settle. It did. Barely. You stood. Pain shot through you. You clenched your jaw. There was no choice. Work waited. Outside, The sky was low and gray again, the mist thicker than usual. The world felt smaller, more closed. You joined the others. You worked, endured. But something else changed that day. Your pride faded. You stopped trying to keep pace. You focused on efficiency, on technique. On wasting less energy. You watched others closely. You copied how they moved, how they rested briefly without stopping. You learned when to slow down. When to push. Your body responded slowly, but it responded not with strength, with survival. That night, as you lay down, you realized you had crossed a line. You were no longer comparing this life to your old one. You were measuring it only against itself, against what it demanded, and what you could still give. Realization was both frightening and calming. Your body hurt. It would hurt tomorrow. And the next day. But it was still working, still breathing, still alive. As sleep took you, one thought settled quietly in your mind. The modern world had taught you comfort. This world was teaching you limits, and you were learning them the hard way. By the time you understood what you were, it was already too late to resist it. You were not a guest, not a traveler, not someone waiting to be sent home. You were labor. You were hands. You were a body that could be used. The realization did not arrive suddenly. It settled slowly, like dust, covering everything you thought you knew about yourself. Each morning followed the same pattern. You were woken without words. A rough shake, a sharp sound. You stood up before you were fully awake. Your body learned to obey before your mind caught up. Outside, the air was always cold in the early hours. It cut through your clothes easily. Your breath came out in pale clouds. No one complained. No one stretched. They simply moved. You followed. The work changed from day to day, but the purpose never did. Digging, carrying stones, hauling wood, cleaning waste. Tasks that did not end. Tasks that erased time. Your hands were always busy. Your back was always bent. Your head stayed down. You learned quickly that standing upright for too long drew attention, and attention was dangerous. The overseers watched constantly. They did not shout often. They did not need to. Their presence alone was enough. They stood apart, arms crossed, eyes scanning the workers as if counting animals. When someone slowed too much, they noticed. When someone rested too long, they noticed. You watched others get struck, not beaten. Corrected. The difference mattered here. Beatings were personal. Correction was routine. You never knew when it would be your turn. That uncertainty kept everyone moving, kept everyone quiet. Your body sank deeper into exhaustion. Each day. Not the kind that sleep could fix. This was a deeper fatigue, one that lived in your bones. Your hands shook when you lifted heavy loads. Your knees protested when you knelt. Still, you worked, because stopping was not an option. You began to understand the rhythm of this life. Work until hunger drowned thought. Eat just enough to continue. Sleep without comfort. Wake and repeat. Days blurred together. You lost track of how many had passed. There were no markers. No weekends. No holidays. Only weather changes hinted at time. Rain made the ground heavier. Cold made movement slower. Heat made everything unbearable. On hot days, sweat poured from you. Your clothes clung to your skin. Flies hovered constantly. The smell of bodies thickened the air. No one clean. There was no time. You drank when water was offered. Never enough. Your mouth stayed dry. Your lips cracked. You learned not to lick them. That only made it worse. At first, anger burned quietly inside you. Not explosive, just steady. You replayed thoughts from your old life. Ideas of fairness, rights, dignity. They felt fragile. Here, like thin glass, each day of labor chipped away at them, until one day, you realized you had not thought about escape at all. Not because it was impossible, but because you were too tired. The work took everything. Your energy, your focus. Your will. Escape required imagination, and imagination required rest. That night, as you lay on the straw, you listened to your own breathing. Slow, heavy. You realized your body had begun to move on its own. You no longer thought about each motion. You simply responded. Hands reached. Feet stepped. Your mind followed after. Disfrightened. You more than pain ever had, because it meant you were becoming what this place needed you to be. A worker. Nothing more. One afternoon, you were taken beyond the settlement. The walk was long. Your legs ached before the work even began. You followed others along a dirt path that cut through open fields. The land stretched wide and empty. No fences. No signs. Just soil and sky. You were handed heavier tools. Axes. Large hammers. The task was clear without explanation. Break. Cut. Carry. Your arms screamed in protest. The repetitive motion dulled your thoughts. Swing. Strike. Lift. The sound of metal against wood echoed endlessly. Your vision narrowed. Your world shrank to the space directly in front of you. Time disappeared. At some point, you realized you were no longer angry. You were not afraid. You were simply doing. Your body entered a rhythm. Pain existed, but it faded into the background. You worked until your muscles trembled uncontrollably, until you could no longer tell if your hands were still gripping the tool or not. When the overseer finally called for rest, you collapsed where you stood. No one helped you. No one spoke. You lay there, staring up at the sky. It was pale and distant. Indifferent. You wondered briefly if this was how people died here. Not dramatically. Just slowly. From effort. The thought passed. There was no energy to hold on to it. You stood again when told. You walked back. That night, your body burned. Heat radiated from your muscles. You shifted constantly, trying to find relief. There was none. Sleep came anyway, deep and heavy. When you woke the next morning, something felt different. Your body still hurt, but not as sharply. The pain had changed. It was deeper. More familiar. Less urgent. You realized with a quiet shock that your body was adjusting. Not healing. Adapting. That scared you. Because adaptation meant survival. And survival meant staying. As days passed, you noticed others watching you differently. Not with suspicion. With expectation. You were no longer new. You were just another worker. Invisible. Replaceable. The woman who once left you food rarely looked at you now. Not because she no longer cared, but because caring was dangerous. You understood that too. Kindness was a liability here. One mistake could cost everything. So people hardened themselves. You hardened too. You stopped reacting when others were punished. You looked away, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. You learned to keep your face neutral, your eyes empty. Emotion attracted attention, and attention led to pain. One evening, you noticed something else. A man near you did not stand up after work. He remained on the ground, breathing sallowly. The overseer looked at him. Waited. The man did not move. Two others dragged him aside. No ceremony. No concern. You never saw him again. No. One asked where he went. You did not ask either. You understood the answer. That night, sleep came quickly. Too quickly. As you drifted off, one thought floated through your mind, slow and distant. In your old life, work had been something you did. Here, work was what you were. And the more you endured, the harder it became to remember that there had ever been another way to exist. Night came without warning. There was no soft transition, no gradual dimming of lights. One moment, the world was gray. The next, it was dark. The sun did not set gently here. It vanished. Shadows swallowed everything almost at once. Fires were lit quickly, small, uneven. They pushed the darkness back just enough to survive inside it. You noticed how people changed when night arrived. Their movements slowed. Their voices dropped lower. No one wandered. No one stood alone for long. The air grew colder as soon as the light faded. Not the mild cold of evening, but a deeper cold. One that crawled along the ground and climbed up your legs. You pulled your clothes tighter around yourself. It barely helped. Night in this place felt older than day. As if it had been waiting longer. You were led back inside the structure where you slept. The door closed early. Not to keep you in, but to keep something else out. Inside, the fire was small. Its light barely reached the walls. Beyond that, darkness ruled. You lay down on the straw, staring into the shadows above. Your body was exhausted, but your mind was alert. Too alert. Sounds changed at night. During the day, noise was constant. Tools striking, voices calling, feet moving. At night, every sound felt isolated. Sharp. A cough from across the room sounded too loud. The crackle of the fire felt close, almost intrusive. Then there were the sounds from outside. You heard animals. First. Distant howls. Low, drawn out. They carried through the darkness in a way sound never did during the day. Your body reacted before your thoughts did. Your muscles tightened. Your breathing slowed. You listened carefully. You had never heard darkness sound like this before. In your old life, night was never truly quiet. There was always something. A car, a plane, electric hum. Here, silence was complete. And because of that, every sound felt important. Every rustle could mean something approaching. Something watching. You heard footsteps. Outside. Slow. Measured. They stopped near the door. Your heart beat harder. You held your breath. A voice murmured. Something. Low. Unclear. Then the steps moved away. No one inside reacted. No one moved. This was normal. That realization unsettled you. Fear here was not dramatic. It was constant. You remembered how safe night used to feel. Your bed, your walls, your locked doors. Darkness had been something you could ignore, something you could fill with screens and light. Here, darkness was an active presence. It pressed against the walls. It waited. You learned quickly not to look into it too long. Your eyes played tricks on you. Shadows shifted where nothing moved. The edges of the room seemed to breathe. Your mind tried to fill the gaps. You forced yourself to look away. Sleep came in fragments. You drifted off, then woke again. Each time, the darkness was still there. Unchanged. Some point in the night, someone screamed. Not loudly. Not for long. A short, sharp sound. Then silence. Your body tensed. You waited for something else. Nothing came. No explanation. No reaction. The fire crackled. Someone turned in their sleep. That was all. You lay there, eyes open, heart racing. Your mind ran through possibilities. An animal, a nightmare, pain. You would never know. And that was worse. You realized something important then. In this place, night did not bring rest. It brought vulnerability. You slept because you had to, not because it was safe. As days passed, your fear of night did not fade. It deepened. You began to notice how people prepared for it. They finished tasks quickly as the light faded. They moved closer together. Children were pulled inside early. Fires were checked again and again. Stories were whispered before sleep, not stories for comfort. Warnings. You didn't understand the words, but you understood the tone. They spoke of things that came after dark, things that did not belong to the day. You noticed markings near the doors, symbols carved into wood. Simple. Rough. You didn't know what they meant, but they were always there. One night, you woke to movement near you, a shape shifting in the dim light. You froze, your breath caught in your throat. It was just someone turning over. But your body took a long time to relax. Your nerves stayed tight. You realized your instincts were changing. You were learning fear in a new way. Not sudden panic. But constant alertness. The kind that never fully turns off. Outside, the wind picked up. It pushed against the structure. The walls creaked softly. You imagined what it would be like if they failed. If the darkness came in. You imagined being exposed beneath the open sky. The thought made your stomach tighten. In your old world, darkness had limits. Streetlights. Buildings. Here. It was endless. The sky felt larger. Heavier. You understood why people feared it. Why stories grew around it. When you cannot see, your mind fills the space. And your mind is rarely kind. One night, you were woken and sent outside. The moon hung low. Thin. Pale. Its light did little. You stood with others, shivering. A fire burned in the open. Shadows stretched long across the ground. Something had happened. You did not know what. You were told to wait. You stood there, listening. The forest beyond the settlement was a solid wall of black. No movement. No sound. And yet, it felt alive. Watching. Your skin prickled. You wanted to look away. You didn't. You forced yourself to stare, because fear made you feel weak, and weakness was dangerous. After a while, you were sent back inside. No explanation. No closure. That night, sleep came late. Your mind replayed the darkness. The silence, the sense of being observed. You dreamed of open fields at night. Of running without direction, of something following just beyond sight. When you woke, your heart was pounding. The morning light felt thin and fragile. As if it could disappear at any moment. You realized how much you depended on it. Light was safety here. Darkness was uncertainty. As weeks passed, you stopped fighting night. You accepted it. Not because it became less frightening, but because fear exhausted you. You learned to curl inward. To make yourself smaller. To breathe. Slowly. You learned to let the darkness exist without engaging with it. That was survival 2. One evening, as you lay awake, listening to the distant sounds of night, a quiet thought came to you. In your old life, darkness had been a choice. Here, it was a condition. It shaped beliefs. Stories. Gods. Monsters. You understood then why people feared what they could not see, Why imagination? Ruled after sunset. Because in a world without light, fear fills the gaps, and night leaves many gaps. As sleep finally pulled you under. One final realization settled in your mind. Day broke your body. At night broke your sense of safety. And between the two, this world slowly reshaped who you were. Violence did not arrive suddenly. It had been there from the beginning. You simply had not understood its shape. In your old world, violence was loud. It announced itself. It came with sirens, shouting, flashing lights. Here, violence was quiet. It lived in routine, in expectation, in what everyone accepted without question. You began to see it clearly after the first public punishment. It happened in the afternoon. The light was dull. The air heavy. Work stopped without explanation. That alone felt strange. People gathered slowly, forming a loose circle near the center of the settlement. No one spoke. No one asked why. You were pushed forward with the others. In the middle stood a man you recognized. He worked near you. Sometimes quiet, thin, careful. He kept his head down more than most. His hands were bound, rope dug into his wrists. He did not struggle. That frightened you more than if he had an overseer. Stepped forward. He spoke at length. His voice was calm. Measured. That you did not understand the words, but you understood the tone. Explanation. Justification. The man did not look up. He stared at the ground. The overseer nodded. Once. Someone stepped behind the man. What followed was fast. Efficient. There was no drama. No anger. Just action. The man fell. A sound escaped. Him. Short. Cut off. You flinched. Your body reacted before your mind. No one else moved. No gasps. No cries. Some people looked away. Others watched without expression. It was over. Quickly. The man was dragged aside. The crowd dispersed. Work resumed. No one spoke about it. No one mentioned his name. By the end of the day, it was as if he had never existed. That night, you could not sleep. The image replayed again and again. Not the act itself, but the calm around it. The acceptance. You realized then that violence here was not emotional. It was administrative, a tool, a way to maintain order. And order mattered more than life. In the days that followed, you noticed how often violence shaped behavior. Not always physically. Sometimes it lived in looks. In tone. In silence. A raised hand was enough to make someone flinch. Pause in speech could empty a space. Fear did not need to shout. It whispered. You learned to listen. You learned to anticipate. You learned how to avoid becoming a problem, because problems were removed, not solved. You saw smaller punishments too. A blow for moving too slowly. A shove for speaking out of turn. Correction, not cruelty. That distinction mattered here. Cruelty required emotion. Correction required none. That made it more dangerous. One morning, a child dropped a tool. It clattered loudly against stone. Everyone froze. The sound echoed longer than it should have. Overseer turned. The child shrank back instinctively. The punishment was swift. Not severe, but unforgettable. The child did not cry. That was the worst part. You realized people learned. Young. Pain was expected. Resistance was pointless. You wondered how different your life would have been if you had grown up this way. If fear had been a constant teacher. If violence had been normal. The thought unsettled you. As time passed, you began to feel it changing. Your reactions dulled. Your shock softened. You still noticed violence, but it no longer shocked you in the same way. It registered. Then passed. That frightened you more than the violence itself. One evening, you were ordered to help restrain someone. A man accused of stealing. You did not know if it was true. You did not ask. You were told to hold his arm. Your hands hesitated. Just for a moment. The overseer looked at you. That look was enough. You obeyed. The man struggled weakly. He smelled of sweat and fear. Your grip tightened without you realizing it. The punishment followed. You did not watch. You stared at the ground. When it was over, you released him. Your hands shook. Later that night, you washed them in cold water. The dirt came off easily. The feeling did not. You lay on the straw and stared into the darkness. You tried to tell yourself you had no choice. That survival required compliance. That you were not responsible. The words felt thin. You slept poorly. In the days after, you noticed how violence shaped the settlement. It moved through people like weather. Predictable. Avoidable. It kept everyone in line. It kept things functioning. Without it, this place would collapse. That was the truth. No one spoke aloud. You understood why there were no debates. No arguments. Violence ended conversations before they began. You also understood why laws were simple. Few rules, clear consequences. There was no room for interpretation. That kind of certainty was terrifying. And effective. One afternoon, two men argued. Their voices rose. Sharp. The overseer did not intervene immediately. He waited. Watched. As if measuring. When one man pushed the other, it ended. Both were punished, not because of who started it, but because disorder had appeared. That lesson spread quickly. Disputes were dangerous. Silence was safer. You stopped thinking in terms of right and wrong. You began thinking in terms of allowed and forbiddance, acceptable and fatal. This was a simpler moral system, and that simplicity was its strength. At night, as you lay awake, you thought about justice. About how it used to work. Courts. Lawyers. Time. Here, justice was immediate. Final. There was no appeal. No second chance. It felt brutal, but it also felt honest. You wondered how many people in your old world would survive here. How many would break? How many would learn to bend. As weeks passed, violence became background noise. Not constant. But always present. Like the cold. Like hunger. You no longer jumped at sudden movements. Learn to read situations quickly. To sense danger before it arrived. Your body adapted faster than your conscience. One day, you realized you had not thought about the punished man in weeks. His face had faded. His absence felt normal. That realization made you feel hollow. You were losing parts of yourself quietly. Without struggle. That night, you dreamed of your old world, of arguments online, of shouting. Of outrage. You woke with a strange feeling. Amusement. Those conflicts felt childish now. Here, conflict had weight. Consequences. Blood. The Morning light came, thin and gray. You stood up. Your body moved automatically. You joined the others. Violence had taught you how to survive. Here. Not by fighting, but by knowing when not to. And as you worked under the dull sky, one final thought settled into your mind. In this world, kindness was optional. Fear was not, and violence was not. Chaos. It was the rule that held everything else together. Faith was everywhere. You noticed it before you understood it. It lived in symbols carved into stone, in gestures repeated without thought, in words spoken softly at dawn and again at night. At first, you assumed it was comfort, something people used to survive a hard world. But slowly, you realized faith here was not just belief. It was structure. It was control. Every morning began the same way. Before work, before food, before speech, people gathered. Not closely. Not warmly. Just together enough to be seen. A bell rang. Low, slow, heavy. Its sound did not rush. It settled into the air. A figure stepped forward. Not an overseer. Something different. Robes instead of armor. Symbols instead of weapons. His voice was calm. Gentle. Almost kind. You did not understand the words, but you understood the rhythm. This was not a speech. It was a reminder. Heads bowed. Hands folded. You followed. A second too late. No one corrected you. They did not need to. You felt the weight of being watched. Not by people. By expectation. After the prayer, work began. No one spoke about what had been said. It did not need explanation. Faith here was not discussed. It was assumed. As days passed, you noticed how deeply it shaped behavior. People accepted suffering with strange calm. Hunger was endured. Pain was explained. Loss was justified. Everything had meaning. And meaning made hardship tolerable. When someone died, there was no outrage. Only murmured words. Gestures repeated exactly. Grief was allowed, but only briefly. Then faith stepped in. This was meant to be. This was tested. This was written. Those phrases appeared everywhere. They were answers that stopped questions. You began to understand why rebellion was rare. Violence controlled the body. Faith controlled the mind. Together, they formed a cage no one could see. One evening, you were invited to enter a stone building near the edge of the settlement. It was quiet inside. Cool. Candles flickered softly. The air smelled of wax and old smoke. People sat on benches, not crowded. Not relaxed. Attentive. The robed figure stood at the front. He spoke slowly. His voice flowed like water over stone. Even without understanding the language fully, you felt the tone. Reassuring. Certain. He spoke of order, of purpose. Of suffering as proof of worth. He spoke of a higher design. One that required obedience. Listening to him, you felt something unsettling. The words were gentle, but the message was absolute. There was no room for doubt. Doubt was failure. Doubt was weakness. Afterward, people left quietly. No discussion. No debate. Faith was not something you argued with. It was something you lived inside. As weeks passed, you noticed how faith justified violence. Punishment was not cruelty. It was correction. Pain was not injustice. It was purification. Those ideas softened harsh realities. They made suffering feel necessary, even noble. Children learned these lessons early. You heard them repeat phrases without understanding. Their voices small, serious, too serious. You wondered what kind of adults they would become. People who never questioned. People who never imagined alternatives. You thought about your old world. Thought about how belief was personal, optional, here. Belief was communal, mandatory, refusal was not an option. Because refusing belief meant refusing order. And order was survival. One night, you spoke to an older man, quiet, careful, he had lived here his entire life. You asked him, in broken words, if he ever doubted. He looked at you for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. Doubt, he said, was dangerous, not because it was wrong, but because it was lonely. Faith connected people. Doubt isolated them. Isolation was worse than pain. That answer stayed with you. You realized faith here was not about truth. It was about belonging. To believe was to be safe. To believe was to be included. That made belief powerful and difficult to resist. Over time, you found yourself participating, not because you believed, but because it was easier. You bowed. You repeated words. You followed gestures. Your body learned before your mind accepted. That scared you. You wondered how long before the difference stopped mattering. One afternoon, someone refused. A young man. He stood still during prayer. Did not bow, did not speak. The silence around him grew heavy. The robed figure paused, looked at him, not with anger, with sadness. That was worse, that the man was taken away, quietly. There was no punishment in public, no lesson displayed, he simply did not return. That absence spoke louder than violence ever could. After that, no one resisted openly. Faith did not need force often. Fear filled the gaps. At night, lying on the straw, you thought about belief, thought about how easily humans surrendered it, thought how comforting certainty could be. Here, answers were simple. Everything happened for a reason. That reason was beyond question. That was peace, of a kind. But it came at a price. You felt it inside yourself, a softening, a willingness to accept, to stop asking why. Caught yourself thinking in their terms. This was meant to happen. This was necessary. Those thoughts frightened you, but they also brought calm. That contradiction was dangerous, as days blended together. Faith became background, like violence, like hunger, always present, rarely noticed. You understood then why faith survived here. Not because it was forced, but because it worked, it made suffering bearable, that it gave meaning to chaos, that it promised order in a world without mercy. And as you drifted to sleep one night, listening to distant prayers carried by the wind, one thought settled gently into your mind. In this world, faith was not about heaven. It was about surviving today, and believing just enough to make tomorrow possible. Illness did not announce itself here. It arrived quietly, like fog, like cold. First, it was just one person who stopped working. A woman who moved more slowly than usual. Her skin looked dull. Her breath sounded heavy. No one made a fuss. People were often tired. Life here was hard. But then another person stayed behind. And then another. Coughing became common. Soft at first, easy to ignore. No alarms were raised. There were no warnings. There was no word for outbreak. Sickness was expected. It was part of life. You noticed how people reacted, that they did not panic, they did not rush to help. They stepped back. They created space. Not out of fear, out of habit. When someone became visibly ill, They were moved, not to heal, to separate. A small structure stood beyond the main settlement, low, dark, poorly built. People were taken there quietly. You learned it was a place for the sick, and often for the dying. You helped carry one man there. He was light, too light. His eyes were open but unfocused. His skin burned under your hands. No one spoke. There were no comforting words. This was not cruelty. This was realism. Inside the structure, the air was thick, heavy with smells you could not name. Herbs hung from the walls, bundles of dried plants, animal bones, clay, bowls filled with dark liquids. A healer worked there, an old woman. Her hands were stained, her eyes sharp. She did not promise recovery. She did not offer hope. She worked with what she had. Knowledge passed down through repetition, not understanding. She pressed herbs into wounds, forced bitter drinks into mouths, murmured words that sounded like prayers. Sometimes people recovered. Often, they did not. When someone died, there was no ceremony inside. The body was covered, removed, the space was cleaned. Quickly, another took their place. You realized then how common death was. Not dramatic, not sudden, but steady. Like a slow tide. Children watched this without reaction. They had seen it before. They would see it again. You thought about your old world. Hospitals, machines, lights, beeping sounds. Here, illness was faced with hands and faith. Nothing more. You began to understand how little control people had and how much they pretended to. Faith explained what medicine could not. When someone died, it was said they were chosen, tested, released. These words softened loss. They prevented anger. There was no one to blame. Blame required options. Here, there were none. As days passed, more people became sick. Work slowed. Fields were tended poorly. Food became scarcer. Still, there was no panic. Just adjustment. Those who could work did more. Those who could not were forgotten. You noticed how quickly absence became normal. A person missed for a day. Then a week. Then never mentioned again. Their space filled. Their tools reused. Life continued. You felt something strange inside yourself. Not sadness. Acceptance. That disturbed you. One night, you woke to coughing nearby. Harsh. Wet. Endless. The man beside you shook with each breath. You lay still. You did not touch him. You did not speak. You knew better. By morning, he was gone. Not dead. Removed. You never saw him again. Later, you asked someone where the sick went. They shrugged. Some returned. Some didn't. That was all. You learned about bloodletting. About how illness was believed to live in imbalance. Too much heat. Too much cold. Too much blood. The healer cut veins carefully. Collected dark liquid in bowls. Watched the body closely. Sometimes it helped. Sometimes it weakened. There was no way to know. No records. No comparisons. Only tradition. Only repetition. You watched a young girl being treated. Her mother held her tightly, whispered words. The healer worked silently. The girl's eyes fluttered. Her breathing slowed. Then stopped. No one screamed. The mother's body stiffened. Then, relaxed. She closed the girl's eyes, kissed her forehead. And stood up. Grief here was quiet. Contained. Public. Emotion was dangerous. It disrupted order. Later, you saw the mother working again. Slower. Thinner. But working. Life demanded it. At night, you thought about how fragile everything was. One infection. One wound. One fever. Death was never far. You began to understand why people lived differently. Why they loved less openly. Why they did not plan far ahead. The future was uncertain. Tomorrow was not guaranteed. So they focused on today. On survival. On routine. Illness taught them this lesson early. As weeks passed, the sickness faded. Not cured. Just moved on. It always did. The settlement returned to its rhythm. Those who survived adapted. Those who didn't became memoryless spaces. You noticed something unsettling. You felt relief. Not joy. Relief. That it was over. That told you how much you had changed. In your old world. Death was rare enough to shock. Here. It was common enough to be tolerated. That did not make it easier. It made it quieter. One evening, you sat alone, watching the sky darken. You thought about medicine. About knowledge. About how much humans had learned, and how little that knowledge meant here. Not because people were ignorant, but because they had no choice. They worked with what existed, not what was possible. That thought humbled you. As you lay down to sleep. You listened to distant coughing. To quiet prayers. To the sound of life. Continuing despite everything. And one final realization settled gently into your mind. In this world, death was not the enemy. It was a neighbor. Always close. Always patient. And learning to live meant learning to coexist with it. War did not feel heroic here. It did not arrive with speeches or banners. It arrived as a list of names. One morning, people were called forward. Not everyone. Just some men mostly. A few boys who were barely grown. You stood among them. You did not know why. No explanation was given. An official read names. Aloud. Slowly. Carefully. Each name landed heavily in the air. When a name was spoken, the person stepped forward. No one argued. No one refused. Refusal was unthinkable. War here was not a choice. It was an obligation. Something that belonged to the land itself. You noticed how quiet it was. No cheering. No pride. Just acceptance. People knew what this meant. Those called would leave. Some would return. Many would not. There were no promises. No lies about glory. Just duty. You were given simple equipment. Heavy clothing. Worn leather. A blade that felt too real in your hand. It was not ceremonial. It was practical. Made to be used. That frightened you. Training was minimal. There was no time. You learned how to march, how to hold formation, how to obey signals. Everything was about order. Not skill. Order kept people alive longer. That was the belief. As you marched away from the settlement. You looked back once. No one waved. No one cried openly. The buys had already happened. Quietly. In private. Out here, emotion was dangerous. The road was long. Dusty. Silent. You walked with people you barely knew. You did not talk much. Conversation felt unnecessary. Everyone carried the same thoughts. Fear. Resignation. Curiosity about how it would end. At night, you slept on the ground. Cold. Uncomfortable. You listened to breathing around you. Some shallow, some deep, some shaking. You realized many had never left home before. War was their first journey. As days passed, you saw signs of previous battles. Broken carts, scattered weapons, burned structures. No bodies. Those had been removed. War cleaned up after itself here. It left scars, not mess. When you finally reached the edge of conflict, there was no dramatic moment. No sudden clash. Just tension. Waiting. Hours stretched. Time slowed. You stood in place. gripping your weapon. Your hands sweated. Your mouth felt dry. You tried to remember why you were here. There was no clear reason, just obligation, then movement, shouts, a rush of bodies, everything blurred. You moved because others moved. You raised your weapon because others did. You did not think, thinking would have frozen you. The sounds were overwhelming, metal, voices, breathing too loud in your own ears. You did not see enemies as individuals, just shapes. Obstacles, threats, that realization terrified you afterward. Because it meant you had stopped seeing people, at some point. It ended, not with victory, with exhaustion. Bodies lay still. Others moved slowly, wounded, confused, you stood there, shaking. Alive. That felt strange, later. You sat with others, no one spoke about what happened, there was nothing to say, words could not contain it. You understood then why stories of war here were simple. Because details were unbearable, in the days that followed. You marched again. The conflict was not one battle, it was many, small, scattered, endless, war. Here was not about winning, it was about wearing the other side down, about survival. You learned how quickly life could end. One moment someone walked beside you. The next, they were gone. No farewell, no meaning, just absence. You stopped learning names, it hurt less that way, at night. You dreamed restlessly, not of battles, of silence afterward, of empty spaces where people had been. That silence followed you even when awake. Eventually, you were sent back. Not because the war was over, but because your part was. Others replaced. You fresh names, fresh bodies, the cycle continued. Returning home felt unreal, the settlement looked smaller, quieter, you felt heavier. People looked at you differently, not with admiration. With recognition, you had seen what they feared. That created distance. You noticed how war shaped society, it justified hardship, it explained shortages, it gave meaning to loss. War was always somewhere. Even when not visible, it hovered over everything. A constant possibility. You realized how little individual life mattered. War consumed people the way illness did. Quietly, steadily, without apology. As days passed, you tried to return to routine. Work. Silence. Faith. But something had changed. Violence no longer surprised you. Death no longer shocked you. That realization frightened you more than that battles had. You had adapted. War had reshaped you. At night, lying on straw once more, you thought about your old world. About movies. Stories. Music. About war. How clean it all seemed. How meaningful. Here. War was just another condition of life. Like hunger. Like cold. And as sleep finally pulled you under, one final thought settled softly in your mind. In this world, war was not an event. It was a season. One that returned again and again. And surviving it did not make you strong. It simply made you next. Love did not look the way. You remembered it. Here, it was quieter. Smaller. Less dramatic. Love was not something people searched for. It was something that happened when survival allowed it. Most unions were decided early. Families spoke. Arrangements were made. People accepted. Marriage was not romance. It was structure. A way to share labor. To ensure food. To create continuity. You noticed how little choice existed. Young women were matched quickly. Young men were expected to agree. Refusal was rare. Not because people did not feel doubt, but because doubt changed nothing. A household needed two bodies. That mattered more than emotion. You watched couples walk together side by side, holding hands. Not distant either, just aligned. They moved in rhythm, worked together, spoke little. This was partnership. Not passion. At first, you thought love did not exist here. Then you realized it did. It simply looked different. Love lived in small acts. A bowl filled first. A cloak repaired quietly. A place saved near the fire. People did not speak affection. They practiced it. You met a woman who worked near you. She was calm. Observant. She spoke little. But when she did, her words were careful. She did not ask about your past. She did not imagine a future. She focused on now. That made being near her feel easy. There was no pressure. No expectation. Just presence. Over time, you found yourself seeking that presence. Not because of desire, but because it steadied you. She noticed. She did not comment. Here, nothing needed to be named. One evening, you sat together after work. The light faded slowly. Neither of you spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Shared. There was intimacy here. Not words. Not promises. Just choosing to sing quiet. You realized then how dangerous strong emotion could be. Love that demanded more than survival was risky. That it distracted. It weakened. People had learned this long ago. That was why love here was restrained. Careful. Contained. Marriage followed similar rules. Ceremonies were simple. Brief. Functional. No celebration beyond necessity. No vows of forever. Forever was uncertain. Couples were expected to work. To produce children. To continue. Children were the real purpose. Not happiness. Not fulfillment. You saw mothers caring for infants with practice. Calm. Not indulgent. Not distant. Prepared. Children were raised quickly. Independence came early. Affection was given sparingly. Enough to bond, not enough to soften them. Loss was common. Children died. Mothers mourned. Quietly. Then continued. You thought this meant they loved less. You were wrong. They loved deeply, but they loved knowing it could end at any time. That changed everything. One night, the woman beside you spoke softly. She asked if you would stay. Not forever. Not as a promise. Just stay. For now. You agreed. There was no ceremony. No announcement. People noticed. They accepted it. You shared. Space. Food. Your lives aligned naturally. That was marriage enough. You learned how comforting routine could be. How powerful shared silence was. You did not dream of escape. When she was near, that surprised you. Love here did not ignite. It settled. Like warm ash. Steady. Reliable. You saw other couples. Some harsh. Some gentle. Some distant. Love did not protect anyone from hardship, but it made hardship bearable. That was its role. One evening, you saw an older couple. They moved slowly. Their bodies bent. One supported the other without thought. No words. No drama. Just instinct. That was love grown old here, not unbreakable. You wondered if love in your old world could survive this way, without words, without choice. Without fantasy. You suspected many could not. As months passed, you felt yourself changing. You wanted less, expected less, and in that simplicity, you felt calmer. Love did not need to be perfect. It needed to be useful. Present. Real. At night, lying beside another human body, you listened to breathing. Steady. Alive. That was enough. As sleep came, One quiet realization formed in this world. Love was not about happiness. It was about endurance. And sometimes, enduring together was the closest thing to peace anyone could hope for. Resistance did not look the way you expected. There were no speeches. No raised fists. No crowd shouting in the night. Here, resistance was quiet. It lived in hesitation. In small choices. In what people chose not to say. You noticed it. Slowly. A pause before a bow. A glance held a second too long. A rule followed imperfectly. These were dangerous things, but they existed. You met them in small ways. A man who shared extra food without permission. A woman who delayed a report. An elder who taught a child something unnecessary. These acts seemed harmless, but they mattered, because they reminded you that the system was not complete, that obedience was learned, not natural. Those who resisted did not call themselves rebels. They did not think of themselves that way. They simply acted according to something inside them. A quiet line they refused to cross. Most people never noticed. That was the point. The system tolerated small flaws. It could not tolerate challenge. One night, someone spoke to you quietly, not directly. Indirectly. A suggestion wrapped in caution. He asked if you had ever thought about leaving, not escaping. Leaving. As if it were possible. You did not answer. Silence was safer. He nodded. He understood. That was how these conversations worked. Nothing explicit. Nothing recorded. Just understanding. You began to see how information moved. Slowly. Carefully. Through trust. Never all at once. People shared only what was necessary. Only with those who listened more than they spoke. This was survival. Not revolution. You learned about hidden paths. Not secret tunnels. Just routes less watched. Times when eyes were tired. Moments when rules softened. The system depended on routine. Anything outside routine created space. That space was where resistance lived. You also learned about consequences. People disappeared. Not publicly. Not violently. They were reassigned. Removed. Forgotten. No one spoke their names again. That silence was intentional. Memory was dangerous. Still, people remembered privately. In gestures. In habits. In warnings passed quietly. You noticed how children played. They copied work. Rules. Punishment. But sometimes they played differently. Invented games. Changed endings. That creativity worried adults. It was corrected quickly. Still, it returned. You realized resistance was human. It could be shaped. Suppressed. But never fully erased. You struggled with your own feelings. Part of you wanted to fight. To disrupt. To expose. Another part understood the cost. Here. Heroism did not save anyone. It only shortened lives. Those who resisted learned to measure carefully. How much was too much. When to stop. When to disappear into normality. One evening, you helped someone hide something. Not weapons. Not plans. Books. Old papers. Fragments of knowledge. Things that did not belong here. They were kept hidden. Read rarely. Preserved quietly. Knowledge was dangerous, because knowledge created comparison. And comparison created dissatisfaction. You realized the system did not fear violence. It feared ideas. Ideas lasted longer. Ideas spread without permission. That was why faith and order were so tightly controlled. They filled the mind completely, leaving no room. But some people made room anyway. You saw it in the way they taught. Children. Not what they taught. how dot encouraging questions without answering them, letting curiosity exist dot just enough dot not enough to be noticed. This was the most dangerous form of resistance because it planted seeds dot you were careful, too careful, that made you useful. People trusted you, not because you were brave, but because you survived. Survival was proof of understanding dot. You became a quiet connector, listening dot, passing nothing directly, but remembering. That role frightened you dot because it meant responsibility dot, and responsibility led to risk. One night, someone failed dot, they pushed too far, spoke too openly. The response was swift dot, silent dot, final dot. The next morning, everything continued. No one mentioned it, but you felt the shift. Fear tightened. Again, dot, resistance retreated dot, not defeated dot, just waiting. You understood then that resistance here was not about change. It was about preserving something inside. A sense of self. A memory of choice. People resisted so they could remain human dot, not free. Human. That realization changed you. You stopped dreaming of overthrow dot, of escape. You focused on preservation dot, on staying aware, on not forgetting who you had been. That was resistance enough dot. As you lay down to sleep, listening to the quiet breathing around you, you felt something steady inside. Not hope dot, not anger dot, awareness dot, and you understood something important dot in this world. Resistance did not roar dot, it whispered dot, it waited dot, and as long as someone remembered how to listen, it would never fully disappear. You stopped noticing the change at first. That was how it happened dot. There was no moment when you woke up and felt different dot, no clear line between who were and who you had become dot. The change lived in small things dot, in what no longer surprised you dot, in what no longer hurt the way it once did. You realized it one morning when someone shouted nearby, a sharp voice dot, angry dot, in your old world. That sound would have tightened your chest. Here, it barely registered. You looked up dot, assessed dot, returned to work. That reaction scared you. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt natural. You remembered how you used to think dot, constantly dot, questioning everything dot, judging dot, comparing dot. Now, your mind was quieter dot, not empty dot, just. Still, thoughts came slower dot, and when they did, they were practical. What needs to be done? What should be avoided? What keeps me alive? The rest faded away. You no longer counted. Days dot, time had softened. There was no calendar dot, no future date to wait for. Life moved in cycles dot, light dot, dot, work dot, sleep dot. You followed before your mind could resist. You noticed how your posture had changed. Shoulders slightly forward. Movement sufficient dot, no wasted motion. You conserved energy without thinking about it. You ate differently dot, slowly dot, carefully dot, every bite mattered. You stopped craving flavors dot, food became fuel. That was enough dot, your speech changed to dot, shorter dot, clearer dot. You stopped explaining yourself. Explanations invited questions dot, questions invited trouble. Silence was safer dot, and easier dot. You thought about your old self, the one who had opinions, preferences, dreams that stretched far ahead. That person felt distant now dot, not gone, just irrelevant. You wondered if that was loss or adaptation. The line blurred. You felt emotions differently. Fear still existed, but it was quieter dot, less dramatic dot. It informed you. It guided you dot. It no longer paralyzed you. Sadness came and went without ceremony. You did not sit with it. You let it pass. Joy was rare, but when it came, it was simple. Warmth near the fire. shared silence. A task completed without trouble. These moments were enough. You stopped needing more. That realization unsettled you, because wanting less made survival easier. And easier survival meant deeper change. One evening, you caught your reflection in water. Your face looked older. Not from years. From acceptance. Your eyes did not search. They observed. You looked like the others now. That scared you. Then it didn't. You remembered how people once spoke about becoming hardened. As if it were failure. Here, hardness was protection. Softness was dangerous. You had learned that lesson well. You also noticed how memory worked differently. Your old life appeared in fragments. Not full scenes. Just impressions. Bright lights. Screens. Noise. Those memories felt unreal, like stories someone else had told you. The medieval world felt more solid now, more immediate. More real. You knew its rules, its rhythms. You belonged to it in ways you never fully belonged to your old world. That thought frightened you most of all, because belonging meant acceptance. And acceptance meant you might never leave. You stopped asking yourself when you would wake up. The question had grown tired. Instead, you asked how to get through winter. How to keep those near you fed. How to avoid attention. These questions mattered. The others did not. You realized that hope had changed shape. It was no longer about escape. It was about continuity. Getting through one more cycle. One more season. One more night. You watched newcomers arrive, sometimes confused. Why-I. You recognized the look. You remembered wearing it. They asked questions. They struggled. They resisted. You did not judge them. You also did not help much. Helping too much delayed adaptation. Adaptation was survival. You told yourself that was kindness. Sometimes you believed it. At night, lying still, you listened to the sounds around you. Breathing. Wind. Wood shifting. These sounds anchored you. They felt safe. Predictable. Your old world had been loud. Chaotic. Here, danger was constant, but it was honest. You knew where you stood. That clarity had a strange comfort. You thought about identity, about how much of it depended on environment. On options, on safety. Here, identity was stripped down. You were what you did, nothing more. That simplicity was brutal. And peaceful. You wondered if returning to your old world would even be possible. If you did wake up. If you did escape, would you fit? Would noise overwhelm you? Would choices exhaust you? Would softness feel fake? You were not sure. That uncertainty felt heavy. But also distant, because it was not relevant now. The present demanded everything, and you gave it willingly. One night, as sleep pulled you under, a quiet truth settled into you. You had not lost yourself. You had shed versions that could not survive here. What remained was smaller. Harder. Quieter. And in this world, being alive was enough. Sleep came differently now. Not sudden, not heavy. It arrived like a familiar visitor. You no longer fought it. You welcomed it. Your body knew when it was time. Your breathing slowed before you. Notice. Your thoughts softened. The world around you dimmed gently. That night felt no different from any other. You lay down as usual. The ground beneath you firm. The air cool. Someone breathed nearby. Steady. Alive. You closed your eyes without expectation. And then something strange happened. You dreamed not of fear. Not of survival. You dreamed of light, a softer light than you. Remember white clean you. Felt weightless your body did not ache your hands were empty. You opened your eyes at first. You thought you were still dreaming. The ceiling above you was smooth flat too perfect. There were no beams no cracks no smoke stains. The air smelled different clean you sat up slowly. The movement felt unfamiliar too easy your muscles responded without resistance. You looked down. Your hands were clean no dirt under the nails no scars. Fresh from labor. You touched your face it felt younger softer you stood up. The floor was solid level you took a step. Then another. A window stood nearby glass clear you pulled the curtain aside. Outside, cars passed quietly lights glowed in the distance. The world you once knew. The world you thought you had lost. You felt nothing at first no joy no shock. Just stillness as if your mind had not yet decided how to react. You looked around the room. A bed sheets a table. A screen resting dark and silent. You recognized it all, and yet it felt foreign like visiting a place from childhood familiar, but no longer yours. You sat on the edge of the bed your heart did not race your hands did not shake you expected. Emotion relief grief something but your body remained calm too calm. You tried to remember how long you had been gone. Days? Years? A lifetime? Time refused to answer. You walked to the bathroom. The mirror awaited you. You hesitated then looked. The face looking back was yours the old you. But your eyes were different. They did not search. They did not question. They observed. That unsettled you. You turned away. The sound of traffic drifted in distant constant loud you realized how noisy this world was. How full too full. You sat back down. Your mind began to fill with thoughts you hadn't had in a long time. Choices. Plans. Tomorrow. The weight of possibility pressed against you. It felt heavy. You stood and walked outside. The street was empty at this hour. Streetlights hummed softly. The sky glowed faintly orange. You breathed in deeply. The air felt thin, lacking something. Tried to remember what you had missed about this place. Comfort. Safety. Ease. They were all here. And yet, something was wrong. You felt exposed. Here. Nothing told you where you belonged. No routine waited. No role defined you. You could do anything. And that terrified you. In a medieval world. Life had been narrow, but it had been clear. Wake. Survive. Sleep. Repeat. Here. The paths were endless. Your mind felt overwhelmed. You realized something. Slowly, you had changed too much. This world had not. You walked back inside, sat on the bed again, picked up the screen. It lit up instantly. Images. Messages. Information. Flooded in. Too fast. Too much. Your chest tightened. Your breathing shortened. You put it down. No. This was not peace. You closed your eyes. And for a moment, you thought you heard it. Wind through rough wood. Distant. Coughing. The crackle of fire. The sound of someone breathing beside. You. Simple. Real. Your body relaxed at the memory. You lay back. The bed felt too soft. Unstable. You missed the firmness of the ground. You missed knowing. Exactly what tomorrow required. You missed the quiet certainty of survival. Sleep returned again, deeper. This time, and when you opened your eyes once more, the ceiling above you was rough. Wooden. Familiar. Smoke. Darkened. The air was cool again. Honest that you did not sit up and panic. You did not question it. You simply breathed. The rhythm returned. Slow. Steady. Your body fit here. Turned your head slightly. The other breathing was still. There, you felt relief. Not excitement. Relief. As if you had returned home. Or perhaps as if you had never truly left. You understood. Then. There was no single ending. No true awakening. You were not meant to choose one world forever. Sleep was the door. And you passed through it both ways. Sometimes you woke there. Sometimes here. And each time, the world you entered felt real. Equally fragile. As your breathing slowed once more. One final thought drifted gently through your mind. Perhaps the question was never where you belonged. Perhaps it was simply this. Where do you feel most at peace? When your eyes are closed. And with that thought, the world softened. The sounds faded. The story loosened its hold, leaving you exactly where you needed to be, asleep.